Jai Hind everyone. I Rupak Kumar from Ajay Garg Engineering College, IT department. Today we start Computer Network BCS 603. In Unit 4 we have Transmission Control Protocol. This is one of the important protocol while we are talking about the computer network. Why it is important protocol? Because this is what the protocol which is used by more than 90% of node, that is what we can say computer, mobile or the network device which is using internet. So this is what the only protocol used more than 90%, it may be a 96% of total device which is connected to internet using this protocol only, TCP. So it is very important protocol. So we have to understand this protocol. So first, it is a protocol which is laying between two layers. So two layers means that is what the upper layer is basically application layer, and the layer from which the TCP, this is what the TCP layer from which the TCP is receiving the data. So it is the receiving services from the lower layer, that is what network layer, and then it gives services to its upper layer, that is what the application layer. So TCP Transmission Control Protocol is basically laying between network layer and application layer. Now talking about the services, what is the services it provided? What is the work is done with that packet which is coming from the network layer in this transport layer? So this layer responsible for packaging of the data. Data is packaged through sending over the network. Next important thing, all the addressing is also done in this layer. Connection control is also done in this layer. Reliability is also done in this layer. So all the important protocols are, or the important work for packaging, addressing, connection controls and reliability of data is completed only in this layer. So we can say this is what the one of the important layer from this computer network. So we have to understand it properly. Next, now this is what is the duty, what the work is done in this layer is mainly we have a packaging of data. Data packaging is also an important task of the transport layer. Next important task which is done by this layer is basically a connection control. It is what the layer which control all the connections which is done in the transport layer. Next important things is that addressing of that packets, addressing of that chunk of data, and then providing a reliability. Data must be reliable over sending the network. This is what the main and important duties done by this transport layer. So we can say a transport layer protocols can be either connectionless or connection oriented. Two types of protocols, two types of data sending is done in this layer. One is your connectionless, another is your connection oriented. What does this mean? You can say connectionless means it is not only that it have some dedicated path to sending data from sender to receiver. There is no any dedicated path that data is sending from that dedicated path. That is what the connectionless. In short, we can say, and connection oriented, that there is some dedicated path between the sender to receiver is called connection oriented. Now understand it properly. A connectionless transport layers treat each segment as an independent packet. Means they are just dividing this data packet into small segments, and these are the segment 1, segment 2, segment 3, 4, 5, and these all segments are basically independent segment. So there is nothing that they depends on each other. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, all these segments are basically an independent segment over the network. So now it is very important when these independent segment is sending over the data over the network, so it may take any route. So there is many routers na, throughout the network. So these packets can take any routes. This is what we can say a receiver ends to reach the receivers. It can be taken with different routes. So they do not follow single route. So these are the things we can say which is in the connection less transport layer. Means it just divide the segments and each segment is basically independent and they are responsible for packet and deliver to its transport layer at the destination machine. So all these segments are sent over the network and they all are independent packet. They all reach independently to its destination and then they merge there and make a data. So this is what we can say a connection less transport protocol. Next is your connection oriented transport layer. Makes a connection with the transport layer at the destination machine first before delivering the packet. As we already discussed that it is a connection oriented, means they make a dedicated path between this sender and receiver. Means as we discussed, it is a very full of routers and machine or network device. They just create a dedicated path between the sender to receiver and then they start sending data over this dedicated path only, and when they finish the sending of data, they just disconnect this virtual connection or virtual network. So this is what here written a connection oriented transport layer makes a connection with the transport layer at the destination machine first before delivering the packets. So after all the data is transferred, the connection is terminated. So this is what we can say a connection oriented transport layer protocol. So we have two types of data sending in this layer. One is connection less, another is connection oriented. Clear? So in this transport layer, a message is normally divided into transmittable segment, the segment which is transmitted over the network. So a connectionless protocol such as UDP treats as a segment or segment separately. Every data packet is treated as a segment separately. Next, we can say a connection oriented protocol. These all are the connection oriented protocol like TCP, SCTP. These create a relationship between that segment. They create some relationship between all these segments in the data packet using the sequence number. So this is what we can say a connection oriented protocol basically work as that transport. Now next is process to process delivery. As we know that there are different types of delivery process. It may be a node to node, it may be a node to node, it may be a destination packet, it may be a process to process delivery. But if we talk about transport layer, then we can say it is basically a process to process delivery of the data. So transport layer, it is very important layer and it is responsible to process delivery of the data. What does this mean? What is process? Process means if we are sending data from Instagram, so it is that one process, and the another side it only deliver to that Instagram process only. So this is what the process to process delivery of a packet, and that we can say is a part of a message from one process to another. Means two processes communicate in the client server relationship. Likewise, these two processes, Instagrams of my computer is connected with the Instagram server, is basically a process to process delivery, as well as we can say it can be a connection with a client server architecture. It looks like that. So transport layer is very important point. So transport layer is responsible for process to process delivery of the data. So we can see here there are different types of data transfer. As we discussed, we have a node to node, we have a host to host, and we have a process to process. If we talk about node to node, node means every device over a network, or every node, every routers, every system, computer in a network. That is what every node in a network is a one node. So if we deliver the data packet from this computer to this node, it is called a node to node delivery. It is also a node. This is also node. This is also other nodes. So from there, here data is transferred from this node. This is called a node to node delivery of the data. Likewise, over internet, this transfer to the another node. This is also called node. Means transfer data from one system, one router, one network device to another network device is basically called a node to node delivery of the data, and this node to node is responsibility of basically data link layer. So data link layer is responsible for node to node delivery of this data packet. Next important delivery of that, it is one of the host which wants to deliver the data to another host over the network. So if we transfer data from this computer to this computer directly, and this is called a host to host delivery of the data. And this delivery is responsibility of basically network layer. Network layer deliver data from one host to another host. So this is what the another responsibility of the network layer. Now coming to the point, that is what transport layer. So transport layer deliver the data. That is what in this host we have some processes there. So process to another process of that host system, of sender or receiver system. So it is called a process to process delivery of the data. So the transport layer is basically responsible for process to process delivery of data. So it's responsibility of transport layer. Here we can say we have some daytime client, daytime server. So we have a server client architecture over here. So this is how the port number is assigned and data is sending over that port. So this is one of the port number of 5200 of some daytime client, and this is what the port number of some daytime server is 13. So what they do while sending the data, they take the data, port number and destination port number, source port number, and send over the network. After that, if they want to send, they also just encapsulate the data with the sender and receiver's port number and sending over the network. This is how the port number is using over network to sending the data from one port to another port. This is what the responsibility of TCP IP, that they also required the port number to sending the data from one system to another system. Now, what the IP address do? IP address and port number is basically combinedly known as socket. We'll see later. But here we see how the IP address versus port number is working to sending the data over the network. So we can say we have an IP address, that is what selected the host. Now these are the IP header in which we have an IP address, we have a port number. Now this is how the data is sending from this IP address to the any process or port. We are just see the port number from this, and they send the data to the port number selected, that is this process number. So that IP address plus process, that is what port number is of every process is given. So this is how they just understand which data is sending over where. So this is what all depends on the port number. Combinedly, we can say these port number and IP address is basically socket number. Now INA also gives some range. Internet Assigned Number Authority is there, where if some range is known, that range is called 0 to 1023. Now these are the well-known range. If you want to register, this is a free, and if you want to register this range, then it is basically between 10242 to 49151. These are the registered. All the registered range are laying in this. This is decided by the INA, basically Internet Assigned Number Authority. Then 4915 to 6553 is basically dynamic range of this data transfer system. Now, what is socket address? That's I said earlier that if we have an IP address, this is what the address of some host or system. Then in this host or system, where data is delivered, it is maybe delivered to the some of the port number, and that's 69 is the port number, and this is what the IP address of these port number. This is the IP address of this port number. So if we combine these, if we encapsulate these IP address and port number simultaneously, we can say this is what the socket address. The socket address is basically very much responsible to sending the data, process to process delivery of the data over TCP IP protocols. So this is called a socket address. Now, multiplexing. Multiplexing means if we have a multiple process over a network, if we have a different multiple process, this is the sum of the process 1, 2, 3, 4. These process is basically combined and multiplexing over a multiplexers, and that is create a packets of this IP, or we can say socket, and that it is sent over the network. After that, as different process is combined and sent over the network by multiplexing of the data, multiplexer is done, and then this data is sent over the network, and the receiver end also the IP packet is just open and demultiplex all these data of process 1, 2, 3 and 4 and so on, and this is what how we bifurcate it in a different processes. So it is also done in the TCP layer, that is multiplexing and demultiplexing of different processes, sending over network using IP address, socket number, and we can say port number. This is combinedly called a socket address. Clear? Now, error control. If we talk about error control, we have a transport layer, then we have a network layer, then if we say that how we check, so if the transport layer and data link layer, the error is not checked in this path by the data link layer. So data link layer is not checking the over transport to network. This is the range where the error is not checked, but error is checked in the path from this data link layer to another data link layer. Again, this is what the destination, this is what the destination of a network or transport layer where the error is not checked. Again, it is from data link to physical, it is checked. Again, data link to physical checked. But in a transport and network layer, error is not checked. Okay? This is what the how we control the error in our lowest layer of this data link layer and physical layer. But as transport layer is not responsible for error checking, so it is not the responsibility. That's why it's in a black. It is in a black format. That's why it is in a black. Now, connectionless versus connection-oriented services. If we talk about the connectionless services, we can say it is in a connectionless services, the packets are sent from the one party to another party with no need for connection establishment or connection realize. यहाँ पे we do not have any connection or dedicated path. If we want to go from our home to some places, so there is a dedicated path. You have to go from that path. But if you are going to your nearest market and all, you can follow a number or multiple paths. So this is what we can say, that is what no any dedicated path if there is connectionless protocols over the TCP IP. So it establishes, and that is what there is no need of any connection establishment or any connections. That is what with that we send the data. So the packets are not numbered. They may be delayed or lost, or may arrive out of sequence because they are using different tools. What they do, they are just from here we have a different system over this network. So the data packet from system A to system B, and these packet is basically divided into number of packets 1, 2 and 3 and 4. These packets send over this network to this. This is take a shortest route. This take some medium shortest route. So these are the different route by which we are sending the data. So this is what saying that there is no any sequences, there is no any need of acknowledgement either. So we will see shortly that one of the transport layer protocol in the internet model, that is UDP, is connection less because it is the fastest. If we try to make a connection, it will take time. So it is a in UDP. In TCP we have a UDP also. That is what the connectionless. One of the example of connectionless services in transport layer is UDP. And next, if we talk about the TCP, it is a connection oriented services. Transmission control protocol. In the transmission control protocol, it is very important that there must be a dedicated path. There must be a connections. There must be some route through which the different segments of data is sending. So in a connection-oriented services, connection is first established between the sender and receiver, and data are transferred. So at the end of the connection is released, means at when the data transfer is completed. If we talk about connection-oriented, we have these sender and receiver, and once it is created a path, then they sending the data over these path only. After they completed, they just release this path. Now this is what called at the end of connection it releases, and we will be see shortly the TCP and HTTP are connection oriented protocol. So we have a different protocol. UDP is basically connectionless and TCP is basically connection oriented protocol in the transport layer. Clear? Now, which one is reliable and which is unreliable? As if we want a speed over the network, if we want something that is, we want some fast data to be transferred, like if we want a video call, then we can say it is very fast, it is a on time, real time conversation, so it is the fastest. So there is no any reliability of that. It may some connection dismiss. It may, if you are saying something, the receiver is not receiving the data, you have to send the data again. आपको फिर से बोलना पड़ेगा ना, you have to repeat दोबारा. That is what it is due to. It is not a reliable, but it is a fast. And if you are using TCP, it is very reliable. So it is using for sending message only. If once you send a message, it may sometime take time, but it will definitely reach to your destination. So it is basically a connection oriented. There is some dedicated path and connection while sending the data over the TCP. So we can say it is a very reliable. So we do not need to send data again. We do not send message again. But if we are talking about the UDP, you have to repeat your word. You have to send your data again if it is lost. So these are the major difference. So in video calling, in video conferencing, we are using the UDP, and in text messaging and in some reliable connections, we are using the TCP, Transmission Control Protocol. So on the other hand, if the application program